Have you ever wondered if you could finance something big, like a car or new equipment for your business, without getting tangled up in an interest-based loan? Well, it turns out there's a core concept in Islamic finance that's designed to do exactly that. It's called Murbaha, and honestly, it's a pretty fascinating system built entirely around trade, not debt. So here's how we're going to unpack all of this. First, we'll get right into what Murabaha actually is. Then, we'll walk through the three key steps of the process: the promise, the purchase, and the sale. And finally, we'll wrap up with the crucial rules that make the whole thing work and keep it legit. Okay, so what is Murabaha at its very core? Well, you can think of it as an answer to a fundamental principle in Islamic finance, which prohibits charging interest. To get around this, Murabaha does something really clever. It shifts the entire focus away from just lending money and puts it squarely on the sale of an actual physical thing. So what does that actually look like? It's surprisingly simple, really. A financial institution buys something that a customer wants and then turns around and sells it to them. The final price? Well, that's just the original cost plus a profit margin that everyone knows about and agrees to right from the get-go. If you can remember sale, commodity, and known profit, you've basically got the foundation of this whole idea down. And this right here is probably the most important distinction you can make. The financial institution isn't acting like a lender. It's acting like a seller. For a brief moment, it becomes a temporary owner, almost like a retailer for one specific item. I know it sounds like a small detail, but believe me, it completely changes the nature of the entire deal. So how does this all play out in the real world, step by step? Well, everything, and I mean everything, starts with the customer. This is different from a typical loan where you go to the bank for money. Here, the whole journey gets kicked off by the person who actually wants to buy something specific. The entire process really unfolds in three very clear stages, as you can see. It all starts with the customer's promise to buy something. That's followed by the institution's purchase of that exact item. And then it all wraps up with the final sale to the customer. So let's start at the very beginning with that promise. Okay, so the process gets going when you, the customer, find something you really want to own. Let's say it's a particular car from a specific dealership. You then go to the financial institution and you formally ask them to purchase that exact car on your behalf, with the full intention of buying it right back from them. And this isn't just some casual conversation, the customer makes a formal, legally binding promise. The agreement lays everything out on the table. They're agreeing to buy the item for its original cost plus a very specific pre-agreed profit markup. That level of transparency right from the very start is a really core feature of this. So you might be wondering, how does the institution protect itself? Well, to make sure the customer is actually serious, they can take a security deposit, and it's called hamish jiddiya. The easiest way to think of it is as earnest money. It's a guarantee that if the customer suddenly backs out, the institution isn't stuck with an asset it never really wanted, which protects them from taking a loss. All right, we've now arrived at what is, without a doubt, the most critical step in this entire process. This is the part that truly separates Murabaha from any conventional loan and makes it a valid asset-based transaction. It's the linchpin. And listen, this is absolutely non-negotiable. The financial institution they must actually purchase the asset from the original seller. They have to acquire the legal title and take possession of it, even if it's just for a very short time. They can't just give the customer the money and tell them to go buy it themselves. That's a different thing entirely. This whole rule is rooted in a really foundational principle of Islamic commercial law, which basically says you cannot sell something that isn't yours. By taking ownership, the institution also takes on the risks that come with it. So if that car gets damaged before they can sell it to the customer, guess what? That's the institution's loss. This element of risk-taking is absolutely fundamental. And that brings us to the final stage. The institution now officially owns the asset, and the customer has already made a binding promise to buy it, so it's time to close the loop and complete the transaction. So the institution then sells the asset to the customer at the price that was agreed upon all the way back in step one. It's simply the original cost plus that fixed profit markup. There are zero surprises here. And crucially, there are no fluctuating interest rates. That final price is locked in from day one. And this slide just illustrates the core difference perfectly. Let's look at it. With a conventional loan, an institution lends money and charges interest for using it. They're a lender. But in Murabaha, the institution sells a physical asset,
and adds a profit margin for providing that service. They're a seller. The end result might feel similar, but the mechanics and the roles everyone plays are totally different.
Now, to make sure a Murabaha transaction is actually valid and above board, it has to follow a really strict set of rules. These aren't just suggestions. Think of them as the guardrails that protect the integrity of the whole process. Here are the most important ones to remember. First, and this is the big one we talked about, the institution must own the asset before it sells it. Second, the cost and the profit have to be totally transparent and fixed from the start. Third, this is all about tangible goods. You can't use this for trading currencies. And finally, it can't be used as some kind of disguised buyback scheme because that would just be a loan with extra steps. It has to be a genuine, straightforward sale. So if you remember anything, think of Murabaha in this simple three-step flow: a customer's promise, the institution's purchase, and the final sale. At the end of the day, it's about the journey of a real asset changing hands, which is just fundamentally different from a simple transfer of cash between a lender and a borrower. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In a world where interest is pretty much the backbone of most financial systems, Murabaha offers a radically different way of looking at things, a model based on tangible assets and actual trade. So it leaves us with a pretty big question to ponder. What role could, and maybe even should, asset-based finance play in our modern global economy?